In a recent Reddit AMA, Andrei Doronichev, director of product at Google Stadia, fielded questions regarding the company's upcoming game streaming service. Doronichev was asked what would happen with Stadia game purchases if the service was ever discontinued, and this, along with many others, is an important question Stadia faces as it nears launch. Now, being a streaming service, if Google were to ever discontinue Stadia, purchases would be rendered obsolete. While consumers will apparently have the ability to download saves, you won't be able to download the games themselves. But Doronichev's answer had a bit of a different connotation to it. One, I think, that speaks to cloud gaming's utility as a service. Moving to the cloud is scary, Doronichev said. I felt the same way when music was transitioning from files to streaming. The same happened to movies and photos and my docs and other files, and it's great. Games are no different. Eventually, all of our games will be safely in the cloud too, and we'll feel great about it. Stadia, pretty much since it was first announced, has been fighting an uphill battle, and for good reason. Not only is it a new service from Google, a company that's never really competed in the AAA gaming sector, it's also a service the very nature of which, game streaming, has never worked before, at least never well enough to become popular among large mainstream audiences. And on top of all of that, not very far behind Stadia's 2020 release is the launch of a whole new console generation. A console generation that, even in our increasingly digital world, will include disk drives and an emphasis on backwards compatibility. To me, Doronichev's answer insinuates that the games industry is on some inevitable one-way track to a future where games are largely streamed. A future where local or physical copies of software and pricey consumer-owned hardware are things of the past. And since other industries are stream-heavy, why couldn't games be? Technologically speaking, Doronichev may be absolutely right. It may make more practical and business sense for the industry to eventually transition to streaming, but I think it's more important to ask whether or not a streaming-centric future is the best possible future for consumers and developers. Games are not CDs, games are not movies. The music, film, television, and streaming industries may bear some resemblance to the gaming industry, but video games are a fundamentally different medium. Games are often more expensive and more time-consuming. Games have shorter shelf lives and are consumed differently than music, movies, or shows. The very way we play games varies enormously from genre to genre. I'm not sure if there's another human art form that delivers the same versatility, variability, and diversity games do, and this diversity matters when we discuss whether or not transitioning to a streaming-centric industry makes sense, specifically from artistic and consumer standpoints. The Xbox One's original incarnation included a 24-hour online check-in and mandatory Kinect integration, leading to perhaps the most negative reaction to any console reveal ever. The fallout eventually forced Microsoft to roll back many of the Xbox One's unpopular policies, and while in some ways Microsoft's original vision for Xbox One was ahead of its time, the reveal is an important case study. Whether by design or a byproduct, the original Xbox One was not made to be the best consumer console it could be. It wasn't made to serve consumers' interests in the best possible way. It was, instead, made to curtail things like the used game market and take control away from consumers. If we are inexorably moving toward a streaming-centric industry, as Doronichev imagines, then this means we're putting more control over product into the hands of the industry, and I think we should consider whether or not we really want that. A physical, expensive console is not just a means by which games are played, it's also security. Consoles are where games are stored and facilitated. There's a measure of control in a console, and with that comes a reasonable expectation as to the quality of whatever games you play. Whatever Google's goal with Stadia may be, a natural side effect of game streaming services is that consumers lose control, lose some of that security. And in some ways, that's already started to happen. Post-release roadmaps and definite game updates and always online service-based gaming have shifted control away from consumers too, but the popularization of games as a service didn't happen because it was a natural progression of game development. It happened and is happening because it's lucrative, not necessarily because it produces the best possible games for consumers. So does streaming represent the best solution for consumers? Does it represent a good opportunity for developers? Assuming a perfect world where latency is non-existent and Stadia runs flawlessly, is purchasing a game on Stadia or subscribing to its $10 a month service, Stadia Pro, a better way for consumers to buy and play games? Stadia has a lot of questions to answer, and it feels unfair to answer any question with anything other than an uncertain wait and see. Keeping an open mind is important, but so is maintaining a healthy dose of skepticism. And in our digital, on-demand world, while it may be tempting to look at games the same way we look at movies and music, I think we'd be well served to remember what makes games different, too.